Oh, fuck! I put a hole in my fucking hand yesterday with a screwdriver, so it's still a little tender. Fuck! Alright, you guys have no fucking idea how much time, thought, energy, effort has gone into the making of the video that you're about to see. All of the shit that I have done, that I'm about to describe to you, I learned CAD design from scratch, from nothing, to learn how to make this guitar and to make it mass manufacturable so that you can order one. Here it is. And the back is made of aluminum. And it's not machined aluminum. It's folded. It's one sheet of aluminum that's been folded up at strategic intervals, and then the whole thing gets bolted to a Baltic birch plywood top. It just works like it's alive. I feel like fucking Victor Frankenstein. Where did this all begin? Reso-Glass guitars from Airline. Now, if you don't know about Airline, if you don't know about Jack White, I'll give you the quick synopsis. In the 60s, Airline was a Sears catalog model of guitars. One of the Airline guitars that is the most famous is the Jack White red Airline from the 60s. The construction of these guitars is really interesting, but I saw a photo of one of these things opened up. It's really a semi-hollow or a hollow body guitar. And when you open up the back, it's two pieces of molded fiberglass with a post running down the middle, and then the guitar is built around that. And that fucking blew me away. That totally blew my fucking mind. I was like, this is made out of fiberglass. I wanted to try one of these really bad. But unfortunately, I didn't have the cash for an original. I couldn't find any original ones that were in good shape. And the fiberglass construction, unfortunately, is making these more and more fragile as time goes on. The resin eventually becomes brittle, especially back in the day. The types of resins that they had back in the 60s were just simply not up to par with the modern counterparts. I did find that there was a Kickstarter that was making Reso-Glass body kits again, but like that was 10 years ago, and they don't seem to be doing any more business, which is really fucked, and I can't find any of the original kits. I wanted to build one of these so fucking bad. At this part of the video, I was trying to explain how I wanted to make the body maybe out of plastic, and I was going to mold the body and make a form similar to how you would make a fiberglass body. You make the form and then you vacuum seal the fiberglass around it. I was going to do that with plastic. I don't want to make more plastic pollution. That's what I was trying to explain here. So, there's that. I was this fucking close to building a vacuum bed just to fuck around with this, but I couldn't do it. Then I remember that we do a lot of epoxy work at my job. Sorry to interrupt again. At this point in the video, I was trying to explain that I wanted to then try and make a central column of the guitar out of aluminum, put the neck on that, and then make some resin wings cast onto the side of it. Because that's how Thunderbird and Firebird guitars are constructed, just out of wood. It's a neck through, one piece of wood for the neck and the body, and then on the sides they glue wooden wings onto the side. So I thought, what if you made the middle out of aluminum, and then the sides could be made out of a hollowed resin piece? That's what I was trying to explain in that section. Okay, so So I decided to make a test body of just epoxy to get into mold making. And let me tell you, silicone mold making is a lot harder than you'd think it would be. So I took an old body that I had lying around, some old 60s Tysco tulip type body, and I cast a giant silicone mold of this guitar, and then I poured epoxy in it. I was really excited. It was finally working. I finished up the body. Oh, God, there's just so much to talk about. But I promise I'm getting to the point. But unfortunately, I don't think that the epoxy I poured was thick enough around the neck joint, because the second I put a neck on it and a pickup and a bridge and whatever else, the whole thing started deforming towards the body, and I realized that this epoxy is not going to hold. And I don't know if it was that I added too much colorant, because I know that can weaken epoxy, but it didn't work. So I was like, damn, back to the drawing board. I went back to this idea of like wings off to the side and like an aluminum post through the middle. And I figured, well, let's just see if I can make a working log Les Paul style thing with aluminum first, to just make sure the aluminum is going to work, right? My initial idea was to buy a pre-manufactured extruded aluminum square tube, put the neck on that, and then put the wings on the side, bing, bang, boom, it's all done. So I did end up making a log similar to like the Les Paul style. I realized I'm doing essentially the Les Paul electric log, and I genuinely really liked this idea, but attaching the wings and making the mold for the wings just wasn't really what I was looking for. So my thought became, why would I attach resin wings to the side of a guitar? Resin that can crack, resin that can break and warp and become fragile over time, when I could try and make the full body out of a single sheet of aluminum, like a flat aluminum plate attached to the center rod. So I went with this idea. I made the first one. I had the first one powder coated in white, and when I got it, it was really small. It was a lot smaller than I had intended. I was going for sort of a Rickenbacker type shape, and I didn't know a lot about folding sheet metal in CAD yet, so I had to make a lot of revisions, and the ends ended up being very pokey because I didn't account for all of that, and it was already powder coated, so there was nothing I could do about it. I learned a couple of things. One of those things, want to make sure you don't powder coat and do all the extra finishing steps on a piece of metal that you're working with until you understand and know the prototype is working. So that was a mistake. I'm going to have to edit the fuck out of this to make it even parsable. One of the big reasons why Big Red, as I refer to it, this is the second prototype, didn't work. I'll let past me explain why Big Red didn't work.
Initially, what I wanted was a fully aluminum-bodied guitar, and this was the form factor that I wanted. Got the neck bolted onto a solid rod and a flat panel, and then all the hardware and all the other stuff has a solid line down the center. So I could never get this one working for a variety of reasons. One of those reasons is the action problem. This was kind of experimental, so you can see that the fingerboard comes up over. Initially I wanted the neck to be perfectly flush with this part, but fortunately that didn't happen. When you're playing it, it's thin and it feels weird because it's so thin. There wasn't really a good solution for holding all this in. This is basically just scrap for parts now. I just wanted to film this guitar to preserve it before I took the parts apart. It's also a lot heavier than I initially anticipated. This is 1/4 inch aluminum plate. So because of the rigidity that I wanted, it's a lot heavier than I wanted. I think it's probably about 9 pounds, which I was going for more like 6 or 7. And I thought that because it was so flat, that it would save on weight, and the intonation is so fucking bad and I can't really make it any better. I milled this out, and I actually made the holes to initially do a string through design, but milling it by hand sucks. And I figured that if I was gonna do a guitar like this, that I was gonna wanna make everything as pre-manufactured as possible with the woodcut or laser cut parts I was going to get. So don't want to do that milling every single time I make one of these. Yeah, we'll chalk this up to an experiment before the end. What I like about this one is the neck. It's like a flying V neck that I did some natural shellac finish on, which turned out really nicely. However, the only thing I don't like about it is that it's a Gibson Chinese eBay neck. I really love how the form factor fits in with the kind of modern but also punky style of what I'm going for.
I took a little break from this project. It was becoming very taxing, and I was kind of losing interest in it. But then after the holidays, I remembered how close I was to having a finished design, and I got back on the horse, and I got back into CAD, and I was designing, and I had a realization that you could make a 2-part aluminum back with the folds up on the sides in strategic locations, and then press that into a flat top and bolt the whole thing together. And I initially wanted to make the top out of aluminum as well, but then I realized it would be easier to make the top out of plywood and then just screw the back to the top. Then you have a hollow body guitar. You attach the neck to the back. Hey presto, and you could even like have a lot of the holes pre-routed for the guitar top. So you could pre-route the pot holes and the hole for the input jack and the hole for the pickup. So that turned into this guitar.
Alright, so here's kind of the end stage of the build. I ordered these parts from Send Cut Send, and there's the aluminum back all folded up nice. The corners were a little bit sharp, so I just took a file to those just to round things out. And there's me signing off. Tone Max, #1, baby. This is 1 of 1. Soon to be 1 of 2, hopefully. There's me test fitting the top. What I did for the jack, since there wasn't a lot of room, since it's kind of a thin guitar, on the inside was I flipped around a Strat jack so it's poking out. And this actually changed on the final design. This is an earlier top that I was playing with. I ended up changing the location of the input jack. And since the bridge pickup hole is there, it serves as a great guide to just line up the holes for the bridge. And those just pilot holes are getting drilled, and I lined up all the screw holes and popped them in. Now on this earlier top, it's actually a bit different from the one that I ended up with. I was just going to drill all the way through that wooden top and bolt the top down, but I didn't like the bolts sticking out on the top. So that actually changes. This is an earlier iteration of the top. And I just do a bit of a poly coat on this one, which I preferred the look of. I ended up doing shellac on the final version of the top, but the poly will just maybe be for the next one. I think the poly matched the look of the unfinished look of the neck a bit better. There's me just dabbing on a coat of quick dry polyurethane. In the meantime, I didn't know what holes the drill holes should have been for the neck pocket holes, so I had to make a little adjustment on the fly, and there's me using my favorite deburring tool, test fitting the neck to the back, and everything is looking good. That's me just screwing in with the world's smallest screwdriver. Great choice. And there's the back all assembled together, and there's the top fit on top. Here's me doing some soldering work. Later on, I would add some copper tape foil to the back of this for a bit of insulation, but I hadn't gotten to that point yet, and I was going to ground it a bit better. But I'm just wiring this up like any Telecaster. Volume, tone, direct to the output. One pickup. It's all you need. Yeah, that ground wire on the screw was not a good idea, but I eventually changed that up and grounded it to the bridge on the current model, which helped a lot. I can't believe how much of a difference that copper foil tape makes on the back of this thing. I pretty much coated the whole back in that stuff and soldered them all together. There's me putting on the big knobs. I like a big knob. And after drilling out those holes through the plywood top with the bolts, I figured that wasn't a good idea. So what I ended up doing was getting a threaded insert that you can actually screw into the top of something that's made out of wood to accept the bolt holes to keep the top of the plywood clean and free from holes. So this one is not free of holes, but the current one is. I just didn't film that section. That's just me putting a little electrical tape down so that the tone and volume knob don't short on the body. If they touch, it's a bit tight in there with those, but they were able to fit fine. So I'm happy about that. Here's me test fitting what it kind of looks like, what it's going to feel like before the strap buttons go on. I did actually end up adding another piece, a little piece of plywood running through the center attached to the back, and that just helps with a bit of tuning stability. And here it is in all of its glory. The new top with shellac, No holes through the top. I changed the placement of the output jack, and she's ready to rock.
And at the end of the day, you have a guitar that weighs 6.2 pounds. You have a hole in the back so that you can access the strings easily. It's a string through body. It's a string through top. So that hole is for the string access. There's a couple of wires poking through there, which I will eventually fix. And then I shielded the back of the plywood top with some copper tape. Essentially, you know, like on a bridge post on a Les Paul, how it's like tapped into the body. That's what I did on the plywood bit in order to accept these bolts. So I hope that you see the vision. I hope that you understand where I'm coming from. And if you'd like to order a guitar, my email is in the description. One specifically is up on my Reverb. If you'd like to buy number one, if you'd like to allow me to build the next one and sell that, or if you'd like to make a pre-order, just email me and we can talk about price. We can talk a little bit about customization. I can put in whatever pickup you want or pickups that you want into this thing. And yeah.